Hello. So this video, I want to go over the ultimate guide for elderly people for home buying. So this is the guide to help older folks, 55 plus, how to buy a home and how to buy a home the right way. Things they may not think of, or maybe you're trying to help mom, dad, grandma, grandparents. Helping them find a home. This hopefully will give you the best. um, the best idea on how to do all of it. So the first, I want to start off with um, let's develop the mindset for this. First is you're not just buying a house. Um, you know, this could be their final chapter. This is like you're buying their next home. It could be their last home. So kind of have that in mind, and with that in mind, they may be good today, but think about down the road. So you have to, let's turn on that mindset. I'm not trying to be negative, but trying to kind of understand what may happen, what the future can hold. And you want to kind of prep for it. So that way, when it happens or when it gets to that point, you're not having any issues. So my name is Luis Mendez. I'm a realtor here in Polk County, Florida, in Central Florida. I literally work from Ocala down to Okeechobee. I mean, if you're within, 2-hour drive, I really help folks. But if not, I have connections to folks all around the states, and in fact, all over, the United States, anywhere in the world. I have connections to folks. If you're looking for buy or sell real estate, I'm here to help you. But I'm also a Christian, and I'm a strong believer in that family should take care of families. So that's gonna be a huge part of my thing. I want you to, when you hear this and learn from what I'm trying to teach you, I want you to come from there's someone who really cares about you and cares that that when you get your house, you do it correctly because it's really going to benefit you. And this is from experience from my last 10 years of dealing with clients, not dealing this on that, but working with clients and seeing issues where people have to sell, or when people get into a tight situation now, you know, they have to make some big renovations, or there's a lot of challenges that comes with 55 plus, that it starts with buying a house, but it doesn't end there. It ends at the end of life and beyond. So we want to kind of cover all of that. So first, why Florida? So I think Florida is one of the best places you should go to if you're 55 plus. One, there's a lot of retirement folks here, so a lot of folks moving here. So you have, you're not alone. You have a lot of people with, the same symptoms, the same story. A lot of retired, a lot of military folks. So there's a huge community, and because there's a huge community, the good stuff is people tend to cater to that. So there's more services towards that community. So this would really benefit you. Another thing is it's practically warm year round. I mean, let's give it like maybe 1 month we're freezing down in like the maybe like 50s, maybe 30s. Um, but we're never in the negatives. I mean, that's that I've never been here in that having it be that low. But I would say in February is probably the coldest. But that's when we get a lot of snowbirds because they could tolerate this. But if you're having a lot of arthritis or allergy problems, a lot of folks like to come here and they say, hey, they actually feel better. Life is working. It feels it's easier to do things in the warmer climate. One, there's no state income tax, and that's going to help folks, especially if you're in a fixed income. If you're not going to work anymore, you're retired, or if you may work because you just don't want to stay idle, you just want to get a part-time at Disney so the grandkids could go to theme parks. There's no state income tax, so that's going to be really beneficial. And kind of like what I mentioned in the beginning, since there's a large population of retired folks coming here, there's a lot of healthcare facilities. So that's a huge plus. Now, with that being said, you have to keep in mind the cons. There are some cons to living in Florida, and one, it's hot, it's humid. If you've never been to Florida, if you've never come here on a summer, come down here on vacation, stay about a week or two. August, if you can survive August, you can survive Florida. Florida gets hot, and it gets hot and humid, and it's sad when I see people come down here, they buy a house because they had a dream to live in Florida, and they may come from like Washington State or from Colorado where it's super dry, and then they come here, it's hot and humid. People are like, I can't live here. This is too much for me. This is this is too crazy. So, and then they end up having to try to sell their house, but because it's such a short time, it's they just moved here. It makes it very difficult, and that's happened many times. I've encountered people. Oh, I came here. I thought it'd be wonderful, but it's way too hot. I can't do it. So that's something to consider. Also, we get hurricanes, so I wouldn't live near the coast if you're really concerned about that, or focus if you live near the coast. Make sure the property you're building is structurally strong. Make sure you have a exit route for if you have to evacuate. Keep in mind a lot of those costs that comes with living near the coast, but that's where I come in, because you can live in Central Florida, where by the time the hurricanes come and hit us, it's not as strong. We're the higher peak of Florida, and things are a lot more safer. Not 100% safe. We're not out of the danger zone, but it's not as intense as if you were to live right there on the coast. So just kind of keep that in mind. Know the cost, and maybe I could make another video as we get closer to hurricane season to kind of elaborate more on what you can do for the hurricane. Also, this is Florida. There's lots of beaches. There's lots of theme parks. So some areas are built for locals. It's going to be busy. It's going to be touristy. So kind of keep that in mind. But the good stuff is you have places like down in Lake Wells or up in Ocala, maybe out near Sanford, Deltona, where there's places where you're still close if you want to, family wants to come visit and you want to go to the theme parks, you're still close to that, but you're also not there where you're not getting bombarded with those, tourists 24/7. So, that's keep that in mind. And then also, the insurance premiums, like, they could be a little bit high since a lot of people are moving here. So these are some cons you may want to have a mindset for of what to expect. Second thing is location. When you move down here, you really want to consider location. My thing is, like I mentioned, as a family Christian person, as a family man, I think family is great to have family, with you at all times. But let's say you have family scattered throughout the U.S. and you guys want to come down here, it might be beneficial to move close to an airport or move close to where it's easy access from the airport. So that way you're still enjoying the state of Florida, but it's easier for family to come visit you, and it's easier, for you to visit them if you, want to go back and forth. So that's a kind of like, it's not a necessity, but it's a food for thought, something that might benefit you. Also, I highly recommend this. Live close to the hospital, live close to healthcare, live close to the facilities. If you're 100% healthy, you barely have a need to go to the hospital, that's a different story. But if we get old, as we get old, we deteriorate. It's a sad fact. um you don't want to be stuck where you're 30-40 minutes away from the hospital, or you're in an area where when you call 911 you have to use a landline because your cell phone signal doesn't work because you're all the way out in the country. You may want to consider those things when you're out there. Talk to the realtor. I'll help you with that. But talk to your realtor to make sure, hey, is this good? How far is it near the airport? Like, am I going to be able to do everything that I need to do? So that's one thing to consider. Next is, um, you know, while kind of like how I mentioned, being out in the middle of nowhere, it's great to be in look for a quiet location, but make sure you're not isolated where you're in the middle of nowhere, out in a dirt road. I wouldn't recommend living on a dirt road. I had a client who, you know she was in her 70s, had cancer, and to get to her house from the entrance of the neighborhood to the back, it just took 10 minutes. That was bananas. and and it's because it's a dirt road and you're like kind of swerving, going up and down. I mean, like it'll be faster for a helicopter. But imagine you have an ambulance going out there and getting stuck because the roads are chaos, and then you need medical attention. It's not going to be wise. Where if you have it in a nice place where, hey, you know what, you're not near the tourist spots, but you're still kind of in the country, may take maybe an extra 10, maybe take 10 minutes or 15 minutes to the hospital, at a regular speed. I think I would keep within those limits. Also, think about flat lands and no flood zones. So stay away from the flood zone. The flood zone is going to cost you more with the insurance, but also think about the level. You know, how you said you don't want there may be single story homes, but you also don't want single story homes where to get into the house you have like 10 steps, or inside the home you have steps ups and steps downs. You don't want that, because let's say 20 years from now you're actually in a wheelchair, or you can't get into your house. You need to pay someone to build you a ramp. Or if you have a walker, going up and down, that could make things a lot difficult for you. We don't want that. Also, you want to make sure you have access to grocery stores, churches, places for activity. Have that gathering, that social gathering of people near you. That's definitely going to make life fun. It's a sad thing if you're isolated away where you're not you're not near talking to anyone. You want to make sure you have at least a close distance to these things, as these are going to be your daily needs. You definitely want to look into that. Now, things to avoid, I would say avoid, the heavy traffic zones, college towns. Well, the reason why is it's going to be very nosy. Yeah, sorry, very loud. It's going to be a very loud. Place to be at, where you may go to sleep at 8, 9 o'clock, where people are probably getting out of work around 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And you want to make sure, hey, you're in an area where it's not a party town. You don't want to be in a party area. If anything, if you could be in a neighborhood that's all quiet, but just consider those things. You don't want to be also in a place with a lot of hills, like driveways that are steep. You want to completely avoid the steep driveways, or going up or down. So think about those locations. That's definitely going to help you. Next is the home style. What kind of home style should you get? And I mentioned this with location. Um, I highly recommend a single story home. Manufactured homes are kind of like this as well. It's considered single story, but think about, you have maybe 3-4 steps to get into the house, you know, um, and you really want to consider if that's going to be okay. Maybe you could have a ramp installed if you need a wheelchair, or get one where it's kind of lowered, and all it takes is 1 step to get into the main house, because that could make things a lot easier, and it'll be a lot cheaper for a ramp to be built. So just think about the steps, how many steps it takes to get into the house. You want to keep things pretty simple and easy, and you want to make sure you have an open floor plan. So think about, you may be good today, but what if you need a wheelchair? What if you need a walker? You want to make sure the open floor plan, there's not so many walls. Older houses are in boxes. You have a box for a living room, box for a kitchen, box for the bedrooms, and everything is like closed off, and you have to go through like a maze to walk around your house. Where in newer homes, things are out in the open. You have the living room, hallway, and kitchen is all out in the open. It flows very easy. It's wide hallways to go to the bedrooms. You have the 36-inch doors to go into the bedrooms, into the bathrooms. These are going to be really beneficial for you down the road if you need a wheelchair, or if you are going to need some assistance. Where some of the older houses, and it's not going to help you, because these older homes are in fact going to have they're going to have smaller doors, closed areas. So just kind of have that in mind, unless those older homes have been remodeled. I would highly recommend, make sure you get at least the bathroom, at least one bathroom that has a walk-in shower. Um, you know, and that's one thing I've learned. It's a little bit easier. Like if you're in a walker or wheelchair, you could have a walk-in shower, and you could maybe put like a chair in there to make showering comfortable a little bit easier for you. So kind of have that in mind. Remember, large doorways. Um, I would, focus on non-slip flooring. You know, you could always change the flooring, but I would avoid rugs. That's something you could do after. But consider the houses that, this is like really popular in the early 2000s. Everyone had glossy floors. I don't know why, but those are super slippery. And just all you need is a little bit of water, or you just walking with socks in the house, you're going to slip and fall. It becomes a skating rink. So I would avoid houses with glossy floor, or, kind of pre-budget if you like the house to change the flooring in that house. You want a house that has smart home features. This is going to benefit you, where you could, you can do voice control lights, thermostats, cameras. I know when my wife, her grandmother, uh, she was elderly and they had certain cameras in the house to kind of see where she's at, to always view her, because she didn't want to move in with folks. She wanted her own place. And so we're like, they had to look over her. And so they put cameras to make sure she's okay. They would monitor her all the time to make sure she doesn't fall. And, so that's something to consider. You want to make sure it has lots of natural lighting. That's going to help you because, I've heard from many that the eyesight doesn't get better as you age. So, definitely open lighting helps. And then also have a garage that's attached to the home. It makes things, you want to have, there's less walking, which of course you want to be more mobile, but think about things about you're carrying things around when you get to a point where you can't move so much, where you can't travel for so long. It makes things a little bit easier for you. And also, I highly recommend having a backup generator, one of those battery pack, especially if you need stuff on, like if you're in a hurricane, if the power goes out, you have something that backs up generator that keeps your medicine cold, that keeps the oxygen tanks, that keeps whatever you need to keep you alive longer. You need to have that. So if the home doesn't have that, there's other third-party companies where you can buy that from, but keep that in mind. Things that I would avoid is fixer-uppers. Completely stay away from that unless you kind of have the mindset and have people to fix that. But if you're moving into a place and you're going to start fixing a home, I would completely avoid that at all costs. Multi-level homes, kind of like what I talked about. You want a single wide with one floor. Well, if you live in a multi-level, which we're going to get into next, the multi-generational. But if you live in a multi-level, I suggest you live in the first floor and have the other family live in the second floor. And then I would, avoid the properties that need high maintenance. Some of the older homes, unless they're fully remodeled, avoid these because your money is fixed and you have it towards certain limits, unless you want to go back to work, to generate more income. You have to consider, houses take maintenance. Even if you get a brand new house, you're going to spend money on a house. So why get a house that's going to start costing you a lot of money? You may have to spend a little bit extra to get something with better quality, but it's going to save you in the long run. My mom would always say, the cheap things will cost more expensive. And she'll say in Spanish, "Lo barato sale caro." And because I always like to buy cheap stuff. I didn't like to spend money. And then when things would break, she's like, buy the quality shoes, buy the quality shirt so it doesn't break. And it does make sense. So let's talk about multi-generational homes. Now, I like this because I would say it was 7, 8 years ago. I used to preach at a nursing home, and it was so sad to see families just sitting there, elderly families, to a nursing home, and they won't visit them. And it felt so, people were just so lonely in there. And so I highly recommend have families move in. it's beneficial for you because one, you could have they can still live in an in-law suite, and I actually have two properties that are going to be available that have in-law suites where they're attached to the home, but they have their own separate entryway, so that way you're not really connected to them, where they're still private, but you're still kind of all together as a family. You can still check up on each other. You can still be there for each other. Um, this is a great way to build wealth. I know I know there's one. This happens more than once actually, where you have the parents, the grandparents own the house. They put their income with their child, and their child either their spouse is away in the military, or the spouse passed away, or they got it sadly got into a divorce, where and then they have their children with them. So you got three generations living in a home, but the adults are putting their income together to buy a home of their dreams. So that makes sense. It helps them out really well, and it financially helps you. You kind of you share a lot of stuff. So why not do that? Why spend all your money, sending your grandparents or your parents into a nursing home when you could come together and care for each other? The cost of living is so high. Sadly, you can't. It's really hard for people to buy a house with a one base income, and now mom and dad have to go to work. Well, then healthcare, childcare is super expensive. Well, now you could have, hey, mom and grandpa and grandma can take care of the little ones. I always try to teach where try to buy a house with one household income. That's like the best move, because if something happens, it's the payments are low enough that you could still sustain something. But keep that in mind. Also, the larger homes or the multi-generational homes are great for resale. Let's say your grandparents, they pass away, and your kids grow up, get married, and they move away. Well, now it's just you and your husband, or you and your wife, in a house that's really big. Maybe it's time for you to downsize, or maybe move in with them, or move around, or let's say your kids end up moving to another state or across town, and you have to sell that property. It's going to be a little bit easier because more people really want multi-generational homes versus uh, versus a typical single family home. So just keep that in mind. Also, consider things to cons about multi-generational homes. Consider HOA and zoning restrictions. That could be an issue if you're trying to develop your home into that. You may run into that. And here's another sad thing: not every family works together. Um, Not every family, is friendly towards each other. So hopefully you are. Hopefully you love each other. You love your grandparents. You love your children. You love your grandchildren, and you can come together. But that could be a downside. And also consider, if you're living in a place, how many cars you're going to need. If the HOA allows multiple cars or parking on the street, if it allows, you know the amount of if there's an HOA rule on the amount of people in the neighborhood. Some HOAs are like that. I prefer non-HOA. It's just me. So consider that. Also, consider the 55 plus. This is another thing. 55 plus communities, I consider those. If you're moving into an area, I know people who do not want to live in a multi-generational home. They're fully aware. They counted the cost, but they still want to live in a 55 plus community. That's great. Now, here's the pros. The pros about living in a 55 plus community: it's peaceful, and most times they're in a gated community, so you're going to feel a lot more safe in those. There's a lot of them. The cool ones have a social, it's like great social club. They have a clubhouse with a pool, fitness center. I mean, Lake Ashton is like one of the coolest places that has it here in Lake Wells. I mean, they have literally everything. They have a movie theater there. They have a dance hall. They have crochet. They have, just name the stuff. Like, I had a few clients move in there and they totally love it. They absolutely love the place. And also, a lot of these homes are built with the seniors. They know what seniors are going to need. They kind of developed what's the lifestyle that they're going to need. So consider that. Also, one of the pros is some of these places include lawn care, and lawn care, trash pickup, pests, just basic home maintenance outside of the property. So that's going to be some include roofs, some include outdoor painting, some don't include anything. So you have to learn what the HOA includes. So just keep that in mind. There are very few, or not few, but some places that seems very cheap. Your question, this is next to Disney. Why is it like $70,000? Then you find out it has a $1,000 lot rent per month. You're paying, $12,000, $15,000 a year just on the HOA. But some people are like, well, it pays for the taxes. If you're paying $12,000 in taxes, you shouldn't live in a manufactured home. Just consider these things. Downside about 55 plus communities, you have HOA restrictions. There's a lot of rules with HOA, so keep that in mind. Hopefully you join the board, and I would say join the board and fight, be the resistance to that, because there's some HOAs that are abusing the system, and they're jerks, they're flat out jerks, and I have a whole nother story about that, but some of them are just flat out jerks. And I'm talking to you if you're part of the HOA. And because of that, there's lack of flexibility. Like they just don't like working with people. And then another thing, a big downside, I say 55 plus neighborhoods will have is you are isolated from family. Like families are only limited to, I say on average 2 weeks they're allowed to stay with you. Some people get away with it. There's the kids come get picked up at night, um, but you have people who are going to snitch and they're going to tell. But just keep in mind, most times people are only allowed to stay for about 2 weeks. So if you have kids coming over for the summer, they may not allow that, or you will have people who complain about it. So just have that in mind. And here are a few things that people may overlook when you're buying a home. Consider the insurance. Make sure the homeowner's insurance, your car insurance, and your health insurance. Make sure you consider these things before making a move down here. Consider energy efficient homes, energy efficient appliances, and a lot of the things at the home. Because mind you, again, this goes back to if you're on a fixed income, you want to save every penny that you can. So that way you can still go to the Golden Corral on Veterans Day, and if you're a veteran, you probably don't have to pay, but you know what I'm saying. That way you can still go out and have fun and do your stuff, but you want to save every penny you can. Consider your emergency preparation. Like, if, your contacts, you have people who always check on you and also check on other people. Do you have one of those buttons that calls for help? Does your house have a safety thing? Feature, like, is it easier for police to, or ambulance or fire department to come? Do they have the information on the wall outside your door, like if you're diabetic or something, or if you have any pets in the house? Kind of have these things in mind. And then I know a lot of people, your kids are going away, so your new babies are fur babies. You have little cats or little dogs with you. So also consider if the HOA allows you to have your fur baby and your cats. So cats and dogs, because I know I've had a lot of people would love to live in HOA, but they have 3 dogs, and this HOA only allows 2 dogs because somehow the third dog is going to break the whole chain of command. So just kind of have that stuff in mind. And so this is it. At the end of the day, I'd say really, it makes sense to, I would say, buy a multi-generational home, live with family. You could do a detached part where the in-laws could live in a separate, like, 1-bedroom studio, or live in a place where you get a big house where you could get the pool house, get everything where everyone gets to enjoy each other. Because you're only here for a short time. Let's say you live for 100 years. That's a blink of an eye. My kid's, he's turning 6 in a few months. Like 2 weeks, he was born 2 weeks ago. At least that's how it feels. This year I celebrate 10 years of marriage, and it's so weird because I still remember, The day we both said I do, the day I proposed to her, it felt like it was just a few months ago. But time goes by so fast. So you really, I would say the best solution is get a big house so the family can always be together. You know, be annoyed with each other. Because you know what? When they're gone, they're gone. That's it. You know, I'd rather be annoyed in your presence than be sad. I can't spend time with you again. So kind of have that in mind. Thank you for watching. This is part one. I do have a part two coming that kind of goes into a little more details. So if you can, go to, if you have any questions and want to look at some houses, call me at 407-790-6232. Also, visit living in living in Polk.com or move to lakewells.com, but livinginpolk.com. Thank you.